Hurricane Katrina crashes ashore at Gulfport, Mississippi. Many people die, New Orleans is abandoned, and the damage will take years to repair. Tonight, the compelling images and sounds of one of the nation's worst natural disasters as it happened. I'm Fox 41 Chief Meteorologist Marc Weinberg. Throughout the broadcast, we'll also let you know how you can help with the relief efforts. Along with reporter Bo Zimmer and photojournalist Sarah Grody, this is the story of tracking Katrina.
It's moving due north now. That's what I was thinking too.
Monday, August 29th. Hurricane Katrina has weakened slightly, but is still a massive Category 4 hurricane. It's just hours before landfall, and we're heading straight into one of the most powerful storms on record.
It's 2:30 in the morning. We're right now in Gulfport. Landfall we're expecting along Louisiana coast around 6 a.m. where we are closer to 11, and we're just trying to make decisions now exactly where to go.
Where to go can be a life or death decision. Storm surge, wind direction, and timing are all important considerations.
From that point on, the only thing I was thinking about is what kind of building are we going to find? We need to find something that's strong enough to withstand the worst of the worst.
And while safety comes first, storm chaser Marc Weinberg is working to position our crew where the winds will be strongest.
The most powerful part of hurricanes is just to the right of the eye. So we look to find out where the eye is going to make landfall, and then we go just to the right side of that eye. Our assignment editor, Kerry McGee, called and he said the pressure has dropped to 902 millibars. He said this is the lowest pressure ever in the Gulf. You need to turn around and come back. And I said, we're not turning around. We're going down there to document this hurricane. If you end up a little bit east of the storm, you can end up being out of the strongest wind. So I think this is hands down the most difficult part that I always struggle with. I was very concerned that we would make a wrong decision. Where I am right now, the wind is 100% due east, which means that is due north of the center. I mean, directly north. So if this thing is going due north now, Gulfport's going to be the area. Everybody was concerned. This was not a normal hurricane.
Around 3:45 a.m., the final location to ride out Katrina is selected. A 4-story parking garage guarded behind one of Gulfport's largest buildings, the 10-story high Hancock Bank.
We're not going down there to get hurt, and I'm not going to put my life and 2 other people's lives in danger. So once we decided on that garage, that was our home for the rest of the hurricane. We just knew that at this point, we're locked into what is going to be an enormous catastrophe. No place is completely safe in a Category 4 hurricane, of course. 145-mile-per-hour winds are still in store as the hurricane makes landfall while we continue tracking Katrina. And throughout the broadcast, we'll show you how you can help out with hurricane relief. As we continue tracking Katrina, 60 miles away in New Orleans, 10,000 people were determined to wait out Katrina inside the Superdome. Unfortunately, Category 4 winds ripped 2 holes in the dome and tore off much of its exterior covering. Winds destroyed buildings throughout much of the rest of the city, and flooding caused even more damage. It was much the same story in Gulfport, Mississippi.
Dawn is quickly approaching, and so is the most powerful hurricane to threaten the Gulf Coast in close to 40 years. Our crew is bunkered down inside a Gulfport, Mississippi parking garage and preparing for the worst.
From the last time we spoke to you, we're now at about 5:15 or so. We're in Gulfport, and I would say things are slowly but surely deteriorating. I'm now covered by some concrete to protect me from the wind, but watch how quickly it goes downhill. And again, this is not near as strong as what we saw during Dennis or Ivan quite yet, but I'd say we're looking at sustained winds in the neighborhood of 30 miles per hour, and we've seen gusts as high as 51 here in Gulfport, but obviously with 150 sustained, we expect things to go downhill rapidly here over the next 5 to 6 hours. There was one point where the winds just started to pick up and they're just getting a little gusty, and you think, hey, this is the greatest, that, you know, this is really starting to get intense. And it was just a splash for what we were going to see. At this point, once we felt like it was early on in the storm, there wasn't any debris flying around at this point, so we could take a step outside so you could kind of get a sense of what it would feel like to stand in the hurricane winds. And quickly, those winds picked up. We got to the point where I was standing and leaning my full 200-pound body into the winds, and I just couldn't hold my footing. It just kept pushing me backwards. And we walked around our building, this bank, and there was a stairwell where I was not even standing on the base of the stairs. I was actually leaning on the vertical side of those stairs with everything I had leaning forward to try to stand into the wind. And it just blew me backwards into a pole, and I ended up with a bruise on the back of my leg from the power of that wind. With all my weight forward, it still was able to just knock me back off my feet.
For Chief Meteorologist Marc Weinberg, hurricanes are nothing new. He's been chasing tropical storms and tornadoes since college. But for photojournalist Sarah Grody, this is her first ever experience in a storm as huge as Katrina.
I'd never been in a hurricane before, so I had no idea what to expect.
Sarah struggles to hold the camera steady on Marc while trying to keep herself from blowing away.
He's a lot bigger than me, so he had to literally drag me around the corner. You were trying to think of how to keep yourself safe, how to keep yourself on 2 feet.
Winds are now well above hurricane force, and the eye of Katrina is inching closer to the Mississippi coast. Marc and Sarah are forced to retreat back to the garage as debris begins flying through the air.
We started to hear what sounded like just these high-pitched sounds. It just sounded like chimes, or like, you know, wind chimes. And all this was is just debris and windows just blowing from the building, falling down on the parking garage that we were standing in. As things started to get worse, the wind started to pick up. We started to see parts of buildings being ripped off, and this is big pieces of sheet metal that were flying around.
It's now 8 a.m. and the worst of Katrina is still to come.
145-mile-per-hour winds continue to blast Gulfport. Next, you'll experience the eye of the hurricane and the devastating storm surge as we continue tracking Katrina.
The eye of Katrina has now made landfall in Louisiana to our south. It will soon pass just to our west, placing us in the path of Katrina's strongest, most intense front right side.
We're looking at about 8:30 now, and things have really changed down here. The winds are gusting so strong that when you get the really strong gusts, you actually feel the ground shaking below your feet. And we're talking about a 4-story parking garage. And as you step out into the wind, we're seeing now debris flying all over the place as roofs are being torn off of buildings. Winds are gusting well over 100 miles at this point, and I'd say we have sustained winds somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 to 90 miles per hour. And again, these buildings are just being sheared apart by this hurricane.
There was points where there were windows that were just poked out of every single car in the structure as the debris was just flying through the openings in that parking garage. We saw little spin-ups, which were almost like these little tornadoes that were spinning around as the hurricane was moving by.
From the roof of this parking garage, we're now experiencing the full force of Hurricane Katrina. Winds outside up to 150 miles an hour. eye of Katrina has now arrived and is passing just to our west. We watch as buildings outside rapidly disintegrate, showering the sky with huge chunks of debris. A group of photographers and meteorology students from Florida are also taking cover in the garage.
I think every window on this side of the hotel has been blown out from the outside by being sucked out. The pressure's dropped so much you keep popping your ears. I've seen everything from telephones falling over, breaking. I've seen roofs just peeled off like a banana. It's like an F3 tornado that just will not stop.
Back in Louisville, Fox 41 meteorologist Paul Emick, who specializes in tropical weather, is monitoring the storm and data released from the National Hurricane Center.
The offshore buoys were indicating massive surge, and I'm like, this surge is going to be huge.
Paul is worried about our location, less than a half mile from the coast.
I was really concerned that if you had been a few blocks closer, you wouldn't have come back. I mean, my concern was, I would say, get up high and go further inland.
Paul's warning is correct. Debris-filled water piling in from the Gulf begins to fill the ground floor of our parking garage shelter. Captured here using an underwater camera.
I want people to be able to see how powerful the weather can be, and the video almost tells the story.
On top of the winds you get from a hurricane, the other danger is a storm surge. We're in the bottom floor of a parking garage, and look at this water actually surging in. This is caused from the hurricane. The winds are so strong that it piles up the water, and we're about a quarter mile inland. This is the ocean that has come a quarter mile inland and continues to seep up here into our parking garage. Now, we're far enough inland we think that we can avoid the most dangerous part of the storm surge, but we are expecting this to be as high as 20 feet.
Miles to our east in Biloxi, a tourist trapped in a beachfront hotel is also rolling video as water begins crashing on shore. He survived, but nearby, an apartment complex filled with residents who chose not to evacuate washed away, killing an estimated 30 people. We are safe. The water stopped rising about halfway up the vehicles on the ground floor of the garage. But until the water recedes and winds die down, we'll be held hostage by the hurricane, taking cover inside the garage, unaware of just how much devastation we will soon discover.
Katrina may have passed, but how much damage the hurricane caused is just becoming clear.
They said there's nothing up there but a lot.
The extent of the devastation will astound you as we continue tracking Katrina. As we continue tracking Katrina in New Orleans, thousands of people who did not or could not leave town before Katrina struck had to be rescued. Helicopters had to pluck many of them from the roofs of their houses. Homes caught on fire, firefighters could not reach them or put them out, and just when New Orleans residents thought it couldn't get any worse, it did. Levees broke, and much more water came pouring into the city. The initial efforts to repair them failed, and the death toll there continued to rise, with estimates running into the thousands. The extent of the damage was just becoming clear in Gulfport as well.
Hurricane Katrina was a massive storm, stretching nearly 500 miles across the Gulf of Mexico. Her winds battered the coast from Florida to Louisiana for close to 11 hours. It wasn't until nearly 4 o'clock Monday afternoon when winds finally died down enough to get outside. Mark phoned in his first live report describing unimaginable devastation around 4:50.
Let's get the latest on the conditions there. Mark?
Elizabeth, I don't think people are going to understand the devastation that has gone on down here. I just can't even tell you what it looks like. Gulfport, where there was casinos now, are just all completely wiped out. The whole bottom floor was completely surged out. All the buildings on the shore are completely gone. We have actually seen boats in the middle of roads, again, completely structures that are just completely obliterated, just piles of debris. The storm surge now is being reported from 17 to 24 is what it was. I think the storm surge on this is going to be more intense than what we saw in Ivan, and Ivan was absolutely catastrophic. So we're looking at a major catastrophe here, which looks like it's going to spread from somewhere around Bay St. Louis, which it would be about 5 to 10 miles, 20 miles to the west of Gulfport, and then as you come back to Biloxi, the storm surge was so high that all the structures on the beach are just completely gone. We got a report from a woman who was in a home, and just the look on her face of sheer terror after she had walked 13 blocks to get away from a home. She said her vehicle floated by. She said she went downstairs, Elizabeth, and the water came up so fast that it was up to about 5 feet in the bottom floor of her home, and before they knew it, they were completely up in the second levels of the building, and this was well inland. So I think what we're going to see here is just truly remarkable and unbelievable devastation.
By 5 o'clock, stunned survivors were wandering the streets everywhere. Kind of give me an idea what you've been through over the last 24 hours.
Since last night, it's just been nonstop wind blowing. We've had 4 feet of the Gulf of Mexico in our home, which we did not have during Hurricane Camille. This just took me totally by surprise, and we'll never see anything like it again.
Okay, give me the status of your home. I know you've got your mom here with you. What happened, and how did you end up here in this parking garage?
We live next door to each other. We both lost our homes, so the water rose so quickly there was no time to do anything. Lost our vehicles. I've come down to this building. I work here, and I'm trying to get in to find a live phone so I can call my wife in Mobile, let her know I'm alive. I lost her on the cell phone about the time I told her I was waist deep in water, so I want to let her know I'm okay.
And at this point, she doesn't know your fate?
Has no idea.
Katrina, to me, I just don't think I'll ever forget the images of what that ocean area looked like.
What you see is what is shattered images of people's lives here. You see a picture of a gentleman. We've got a guy here we're going to talk to in a second whose home is now just blown inland, and the debris we're standing on is actually part of his house. And just a sign of how powerful this storm surge is, this is a boat sitting in front of somebody's front yard, and what looks like an absolute war zone here. Vehicles with the windows that are just penetrated by all the debris. And beyond this, if you look out into the distance, you can see the ocean and what is just a scar of what remained before Katrina made landfall just 12 hours ago.
You'd walk through and you'd step over little kids' shoes or pictures of people's families, and that kind of stuff was just, I mean, it was the really little things that made you realize how big the storm was.
Imagine being homeless, without a job, and in an area without electricity or phones.
Now, where do you go from here?
That's a very good question.
What's next for residents determined to cope with one of the nation's biggest natural disasters as we continue tracking Katrina? We continue to track Katrina as its remnants breeze into Kentucky. High waters rushed through several Hopkinsville neighborhoods. A 10-year-old girl drowned when she was swept into a drainage ditch. Part of a roof collapsed at Christian County High School, damaging a dozen classrooms and demolishing a gym floor. No one was there when it happened. By the time Katrina reaches the Louisville area, she only has just enough strength to pull down some trees and leave people without power. But nearly everyone felt Katrina's power in one way. With refineries damaged by the hurricane, by Wednesday, Kentuckiana saw its first gas prices above $3. Meanwhile, in Gulfport, residents look towards an uncertain future.
From Gulfport to Long Beach and beyond, areas along the Mississippi coastline were simply wiped out.
And every time you think you saw the worst of it, there was more.
Blocks in from the coast, a 10-foot-high pile of debris lined the roadway, an indicator of how high the storm surge actually was. Water came up to a level as high, or in many cases much higher, than it did when Hurricane Camille struck the area back in 1969.
And that was where we got out of the car and we couldn't drive anymore because we couldn't get past the trees. So we drove our car, parked it, and we started walking. And we got about 2 blocks and we saw this guy standing next to a pink house just crying.
I lived up there in my house and everything. They said it's all gone.
The whole house was shaking, and after it came in, the water was waist high, and we was wondering if we was gonna make it out alive or not.
If you look right over there, emptiness. Nothing left in my home. It's gone. I'm at a loss for words.
I just don't think anything could have prepared us for the horror we saw. So we got to the debris field, which was 4 blocks from the shore, and this debris was probably 100 feet wide.
When we were walking through the rubble in Long Beach, I was terrified that I was going to walk over one of these front doors and see an arm or a leg or see someone's body there, because when you saw these houses, they were just completely leveled.
This hurricane had succeeded in wiping every single thing that people had built up for years to make that beautiful, beautiful resort area of Long Beach was now just a scar on the beach.
It's now been almost 1 week since Hurricane Katrina smashed ashore in southern Mississippi. It could still be months before the full scope of death and destruction is finally known.
Katrina's effects will be with us for years, if not decades. It brought about the largest evacuation in U.S. history as thousands of refugees left New Orleans, and thousands of others across Mississippi and elsewhere have seen their lives changed forever. We leave you tonight with more of those compelling images captured by photojournalist Sarah Grody. For her and for Bo Zimmer, I'm Marc Weinberg. Good night.
Trying to wash us away. They're trying to wash us away. Louisiana, Louisiana. They're trying to wash us away. They're trying to wash us away. They're trying to wash us away. They're trying.